It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are. Good morning. Red Eye Radio is what we are. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has a personal day today, so it's you and me. And I'm all ready because, you know, the football playoffs. Last week, I was wearing, I don't have any NFL or college football jerseys. I just don't. You know, and I don't buy any NFL stuff. I just don't. But I do have football jerseys. And last week, of course, I wore my Polk High Al Bundy football jersey. But as you know, the playoffs continue the divisional round in the NFL this week, and the Bills are still in it. So I needed to wear something for good luck. So I pulled this one out of the closet, and I'm currently wearing number 44, bright red, Gump on the back. My Forrest Gump football jersey. And the funny thing is, whenever it doesn't happen very often where I get together with people and watch football, but whenever I do, I wear one of the two. People go, where the hell did you get these? Oh, my gosh. So you're not going to wear a Bills jersey? I said, I really haven't bought any stuff from the NFL for the longest time. Plus, you ever see how expensive jerseys are? Like in the NFL, I remember the last one I was that I happened to be in. It was a hockey store, and this goes back, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, and it was like a hockey jersey was like $170. It's like, you out of your mind? When I can get a Forrest Gump or an Al Bundy jersey with the same quality material for $16 or $17, and you think, well, you got to support the team. All right, thanks, putty. And you think I'm going to go buy something for $100? I could be a billionaire. I could be an oligarch. I could be part of the tech industrial complex that we've been hearing about the last couple of days. I could be a mega billionaire. I'm not going to pay $170, and it's got to be higher now, or $200 for an officially licensed NFL jersey. Sorry. So, and I found out for a much less money, you get a lot more, reaction. So, and the chicks like it too, because they go, wow, where'd you get that from? I'm going to get clear, if Senator Hirono is listening, I have not committed any sexual crimes at all. I have not sexually harassed anyone. I want to make this clear. In my entire life, I have never done it. Just to make sure that we pass the Hirono test. She's been asking that question to every single person. I guess it's a result of Bill Clinton. Her being a Democrat, it just goes all the way back. She just can't get out of her mind, the whole Bill Clinton stuff that went on. Well, how are you? You doing good? There's just too much. There's just too much going on. And I'm under the same predicament that I've been every day this week. I don't know where to start because there's so much. So let's start with this. The next time that Eric and I talk to you, Biden will be over, Trump will be in. And so it's, a new 4 years that Eric and I will, we'll be analyzing what's going on. As I told everybody a long, long time ago, I said, I'll be voting for Trump, and the number one reason is to stop the weaponization of government. That's the number one reason. I have always, as a talk radio host, and so has Eric, just in case you're a first-time listener to the show, we're conservative/libertarian. And so you can look at it, and I would say that probably, I'm going to, a little benefit of the doubt, 99.9% of what the Democratic Party proposes and what they wish to do in legislation, I'm against. And I'm saying 99.9% because there might be something that I agree with, and I just want to make sure I cover my posterior. When I look at the Republican Party, when I look at Republican presidents, in my lifetime, since I've been a talk show host, whatever, might have agreed probably, I'm going to say 60 to 70%. All right. With Trump, it might be 70 to 75%. There are things I disagree with him on it. The Republican Party is moving away, and I can speak for Eric here, is moving further away over the last 20 years from conservative libertarian ideals. They're still by far the party I'm going to vote for. So just like we criticized Biden and the Democrats where they stand on the issues, we will compliment and we will criticize the Republicans in whatever they end up deciding to do. But for me, this was an easy election because it was about the weaponization of government. That has to stop. And so we will judge the Republicans over the next, 2 years because they have both houses and the executive branch. We'll judge them the way we always have, issue by issue by issue. It's not personality driven. We do not practice political idolatry here on the show. We never have. And if you're a longtime listener, you know that that's what we do. And if we disagree with something with Trump, it's not personal. And I think the vast majority of our audience knows that it's issue by issue, and we'll explain exactly why we disagree with someone. It just won't be a general brush. It was never for us, Biden sucks. And then we don't explain why he does. To us, that's childish. We're adults here. Well, 80% of the time, I'm an adult. The child will always be in me. And we'll do the same with Trump or any other Republican out there as we've always done. But it's always for us based on the issues. And we talked about this. You've heard us talk about the sideshow that goes on in both political parties. I was telling everyone last week just watching the comedian Jim Brewer, and this was after the election. And yeah, he supports Trump, but he talked about the circus that goes on, and we understand that's all part of politics. I've done this long enough where you get to a convention, and as I said the other day, and Hulk Hogan, oh, you're going to vote. It's like, oh God, come on, let's just let's talk the specific issues and let's. But I understand it's a part of it. It's a part of the the celebratory nature of political parties, and people in a political party and at a convention, there's an attempt to unify and celebrate and things like that. But for us, that's not really important. It's what are you going to do? And especially after the Biden administration, where you have seen maybe like never before, symbolism over substance. And that comes directly from the late, great Rush Limbaugh. You have seen symbolism to the point where at times there is no substance. They just throw out the symbolism, and you're like, well, what do you mean? Well, I'm not going to explain it to you if you don't know. Why not? And so it's going to be fun over the next 4 years. And I do think a lot of what the Republican Party is going to do, number one, I do think they're serious on it. How much they can get through, how much they will be unified, that's still to be seen. But I do think that there's more of a seriousness in the Republican Party than I've seen in a long, long time, and a bluntness that this is why we're right, and this is why, the other side is wrong. And I like that. And I like what I've seen so far. I like the vast majority of what I've seen so far from the nomination hearings. I believe that Trump is a much more disciplined politician. I don't say that. I know some reaction would be, you call him a politician. It's not an insult. He's a politician. That's his job description. He's president, but he's a politician. And that's okay. As long as, like I said, whenever we hear this, we just roll our eyes. Well, you guys are political. Well, since we're talking politics, yeah. Like before, when I was talking about the NFL. You guys are too football. Yeah, well, we were talking about the NFL. But stop being football. Yeah, but it's the NFL. I don't care. Would you love the NFL? I love the NFL. I just don't like football. Let's just stop it. In politics, if you're promoting the right thing, that's good politics. There's good politics. There's bad politics. So we'll still do what we've always done, which is explain in detail why we come to our conclusions. And we're going to have a lot of fun over the next 4 years, too, as we always do, because life is too short. I know Eric's got it occasionally, and I've got it occasionally. People say, you guys are having too much fun and things are serious. And as we've always said, no one will ever take the joy out of life. No one will ever take that from me or Eric. I know I can speak for him there. No one. And I know that the vast majority of you listening, conservatives, know what I mean. You're passionate about what you believe, but you go out there and you enjoy life, and you're not going to let anybody take your happiness away from you either. So we're going to start the fun coming up. I mean, I'm just shaking my head. They don't get it. They just don't get it. They have no idea. And if they have an idea of why they lost, the Democrats have no place else to go. And it's really interesting. In a way, it's fascinating watching it. And the arguments that they make. And one of the good things about the Republican Party is because they're blunt and they're getting more specific on explaining the issues and why they believe what on the issues, it's making Democrats even look dumber. And we'll have examples coming up. So we've got a great show ahead for this Friday. Cold weather coming in across the country. We already have the big signs. I was coming in on the tollway, and it's like ice prevention, ice prevention, ice prevention, and whatever they lay down, the brine solution, whatever, you can see the tracks along it. And I think we could be close to 70 today, but then tomorrow night, I think it goes down to, there'd be Saturday night down to 24. By the time we get to, I think, Monday and Tuesday, 19, 20, 21 degrees. And I know places are going to be colder. I saw the temperature for the Bills game in Buffalo. I know I'm going to get it from some Bills fans. Why don't they have a dome? It's like going to be 9 degrees or something like that. It's like, nah. If I had athletic ability when I was a kid, I'm sure I would have chosen an indoor sport. That's too cold. Like I said, great show ahead. Your participation, we would love. 866-90-RED-EYE.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Starting and charging system-related issues are one of the most common causes of winter breakdowns. So when your batteries talk, it's important you listen. Knowing the warning signs that could indicate your electrical system needs attention can help you avoid getting stuck out in the cold this winter. Have your electrical system checked by a certified technician if your vehicle begins to shut down electrical loads like radios and cab lights while in operation. This is a surefire sign that you're experiencing low battery voltage, and continuing to run on these conditions can lead to additional electrical systems shutting down.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric is off this morning. It's you and me. And as you noticed, the Democrats have come up with a new term to attack Republicans. The tech industrial complex. Have you heard this? So they must have workshopped this. They must have all got around and go, what's the new talking point? What's a new talking point? Well, you know, you got Elon Musk, you got Zuckerberg, and Bezos. All these billionaires seem to be changing their opinions on things. Elon Musk used to be a liberal. Therefore, there is a new tech industrial complex. Now, you may be wondering, what does that even mean? Well, I'm not sure what it means from Democrats, but we know where it came from, which was the military-industrial complex. Now, Biden talked about that in his farewell address the other day, that referenced Eisenhower, and that goes back to Eisenhower talking about the power of the military-industrial complex when post-World War II you had military spending at 10% of GDP. It was like when you've got that kind of money in there, that you've got the defense companies that become extremely powerful and wish to curry favor with the government. You look at that, you go, okay, yeah, like any company that does business with the government, they want that money to continue in some way. Let me give you an example. You could say the electric vehicle industry. You could say solar and wind, which is why I think it was, I don't know which one of us came up with it a long time ago. It was big wind. Instead of big oil, big wind. A lot of big wind coming out of D.C. the last couple of years. And so now and so that's basically what it was about. And now you've got, for example, military spending probably is not over 5%, probably about 3% of GDP, and it's been going down almost every single year. The defense portion of the budget becomes smaller. The defense portion of the overall GDP becomes smaller and smaller. So is that what they're talking about? Are they talking about that the tech industry is getting 10% of the GDP? Because that's not happening. So what are they talking about? Well, does it really matter to Democrats? All you have to do is sit there and throw out the oligarchs of the tech industrial complex, and that's all you got to throw out. You throw out that phrase. I guarantee we're going to hear that phrase for the next 4 years. But what exactly does it mean? Does it have any credibility? We'll talk about that next here on Red Eye Radio.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio. from the Uniden America Studios.
Welcome and good morning. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has a personal day today, so it's you and me. Hey, download our Red Eye Radio app today. Couple of things. First off, if you download the app, you'll be able to listen to the podcast, which means if you've been listening overnight and changed jobs, whatever, and you just can't listen overnight, well, then you can listen to our podcast. A few minutes after the show is done, our show becomes our podcast, and you can get it on the Red Eye Radio app. And also, if you can't get one of your favorite radio stations, you're up overnight, you can listen on our app because we stream it. Yep. All right, so talking about the new term that Democrats have come up with that you're going to hear over and over and over and over and over again. The tech industrial complex. The oligarchy. I mean, you're going to hear those terms. The Democrats have come up with that here in the last couple of days. That coming up in a little bit, we'll talk about, Bernie Sanders talking about that same thing about Musk and Zuckerberg and whatever, and that we are becoming a tech industrial complex. Now, it doesn't make any sense, as I explained to you before, what the military industrial complex was. That was massive amounts of taxpayer dollars going to, build the military. And then at that point, the concern was from Eisenhower, because it was 10% of GDP, roughly, that the defense plants, the military industrial complex had too much of a hold on the country. And as I've said, I haven't heard that term in a while because, as we know, the defense spending in this country, as related to the GDP, it can change depending on, for example, after 9/11, of course, military spending went up, and I think it went up a couple of times to 5%. But I think it's roughly, and I'm doing this from memory, probably 3 to 4% of GDP, but going down each and every year because defense is not going up, for example, and becoming a bigger slice of the pie of the budget like Social Security and Medicare. It's becoming a smaller amount of it. It may still go up, and we still spend a ton, but it's not the same thing. But they've moved on from the military-industrial complex to the tech-industrial complex. They don't explain what it means, except you have billionaires. For example, you've got Musk, that is not an official part of the government, but wants to influence Trump on policy, and the policy would be not spending as much money because the debt will destroy us financially. And I don't think anybody disagrees with the fact that the debt eventually will hurt us. We know it will hurt us because it already has. You've seen it. You've all felt inflation. The inflation did not come from corporate greed. The inflation came from government policy. It came from government spending. That's where it came from. Long-term inflation always, long-term out-of-control inflation always comes from government policy. It comes from spending too much. It comes from the debt. It comes from the Fed printing money so they could buy their own debt. This stuff really isn't, that complicated. So you look at that and you go, well, it's not really a bad thing. He's not saying, Now, I will say this. Musk has come out and said, look, I don't need any subsidies for electric vehicles whatsoever, and that's really good, and we should ensure that there are no subsidies at all for whether it's him directly, those who buy his product, or any battery companies or whatever. And I hope that he is going in that particular direction. But Elon Musk is not responsible for the subsidies for electric vehicles. That came specifically from the Democrats, who are screaming now about this tech industrial complex. Well, if it comes from the subsidies for electric vehicles or alternative energy that Musk is involved in, he didn't start it, you did. So what is it then? And again, this is the beauty about Democrats. They throw out slogans, create an image, but never explain precisely what the problem is, except for the influence. We know with the military-industrial complex, the influence was a part of the fact that government was spending billions of dollars to military contractors. Therefore, those contractors were much more involved in government policy. And we can understand that and go, okay, yeah, that should always be a concern if you're throwing out that kind of money. Just like today as conservatives, we throw out and say, well, what's the influence of all of these subsidies that are being thrown out in order to cure climate change? So, yeah, you can look at that. But the tech industrial complex, what's that about? And what should we be concerned about? Well, I'll tell you what we should be concerned about. The tech industrial complex, when you look at it, became a problem not based on the money flowing into it, but by the cooperation of the tech companies under Democrat control in censoring free speech in America. And this is the gall of the Democrats. If there's a problem with the tech industrial complex, they created it. Democrats created the censorship. Liberals created the censorship that we saw, and now you have those involved in the, I'm going to put it in quotation marks, the tech industrial complex is a problem now for Democrats because the tech industrial complex is now coming out and saying, you know, all this censoring that we did, all this cooperation with the government that we did because it's what the liberals and the Democrats wanted was wrong. And now we are going to do a lot less censorship. And we realize that the fact checkers out there weren't actually fact checkers. The fact checkers we hired were political activists who supported the Democratic Party. And now the tech industrial complex is saying, nope. Since we have these massive tech companies that have X, Facebook, whatever, Instagram, let's let the people, through community notes, let the people correct the misinformation out there. And this is why we all know there isn't anybody who doesn't, there isn't one Democrat that doesn't know that it's the Democrats that wanted the censorship. There isn't one Democrat that doesn't know that what happened in 2020 with the Hunter Biden laptop was the tech companies cooperating and being influenced with what the liberals in government wanted at that time. We all know that. We all know it's the Democrats that want censorship. Conservatives don't want censorship. And any conservative that does, anybody who calls themselves a conservative, who I'm going to make sure I'm correct in my language, anybody who claims to be a conservative and says that they want that massive censorship that we saw, they're wrong. Now, in order to get what they feel is the only argument that they can make, they will claim that conservatives want censorship because conservatives want age-appropriate materials for minors. It's like, what? We've always said age. We're talking about adults here. We're not talking about children because, of course, we all censor what children can be exposed to. So this is the weak argument that they're attempting to throw out there. And they feel, because it's worked for them before, that they don't have to explain anything. They just come up with a new slogan or a new phrase without having to explain or go into detail, as I've just done right here. Because you cannot, what I've just stated to you is the truth. If you wish to say there is a, quote, quotation marks, tech industrial complex that influences the government or cooperates with the government, well, that was Democrats who created that. That was liberals who created that. It's Democrats who promoted that and want it. We don't, they do. And now, just like everything else, they throw out an accusation against Republicans and conservatives, which is actually what they are. They project what they are, and they attack the other side. And we'll have some great audio cuts coming up here in a little bit of, the pushback. And this is easy. The one thing I like about so many of the nominees that Trump has put in is they know how to argue. And if you've been a long-time listener to the show, Eric and I have said this for the longest time. It's all about communication. That's what it's about. It's all about communication, because on every single major issue, the Democrats cannot win the argument. And once you understand that, and once you understand what the argument is, and once you understand what the facts are, which I have seen from the vast majority of the arguments coming from the Trump nominees, that's when you win. You had the Kamala, former Kamala aide going back and forth with Scott Jennings. And Scott Jennings said, you lost because you stink on the issues, as we've said. You stink on the issues. No. We just don't communicate it effectively. No, you stink on the issues, and the public figured it out. You've tried to BS your way. You've tried to use propaganda. You've tried to use slogans. You've tried to use censorship. None of it has worked, and now you're down. Now you're naked. Now you got to get out there, and you've got to prove to the American people that what you believe is correct, and you can't do it. And that's the problem that you have. So your only fallback position is to do exactly what you've done. Okay, let's sit in the conference room. What do we got here? All right. Did we use plutocracy already? Okay. Okay, oligarchs. Yeah, but that's really Russians. Doesn't matter. We'll just use that anyway here. And what else we got to come up with? Tech industrial complex. The Republicans have a tech industrial complex. We must get rid of the tech industrial complex. What does it mean? I don't have to explain it. I'm just going to accuse you of being part of the tech industrial complex. All right. We're going to argue that with you, and we're going to go point by point, and you can't win it. 866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has a personal day. He's off today. It's you and me. So, okay, we've addressed the tech industrial complex, and we're just making sure that even before the Trump administration begins, what the Democrats will be using. All right? You're going to hear that over and over again. And the other one is the oligarchy. Bernie Sanders talked about that yesterday. We'll get to that. Biden talked about it. Talking about Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and a few others have created an oligarchy with the Trump administration, because Biden wasn't saying that his administration was an oligarchy. So what does that word actually mean? What is the precise definition? And does the definition fit what is going on right now with somebody like Elon Musk or Zuckerberg? Is that actually what is going on based on the definition of words? And we know Democrats hate definitions, but words have meaning. So we'll get to that and just a whole bunch more. We'll get more audio coming up from some of the other nominees yesterday, which some of it was just pure greatness that we had. Also, that story coming up, the FBI closed their DEI office in December. A new poll out there about the Biden administration and a whole bunch more. We'll have to wrap up the week. So any story out there that's of importance, we'll make sure we get to you before the show ends today. 866-90 Red Eye.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. He's got a personal day. So it's you and me, and we are going to have some fun here right now. Last hour, we talked about the tech industrial complex because Democrats got to come up with something new. All right? They even know it. We can't sell what we've been selling. Now, they can't sell, as we explained to you, the tech industrial complex. They're trying to go for, and just so you know, back in 2017 when Trump became president, they accused Trump of creating a military industrial complex government, going all the way back to the Eisenhower quote way back then. But in case you didn't know it, I forgot to mention that last hour. So they can't really use that anymore. So now they've come up with the tech industrial complex, which the tech industrial complex is their belief that because Elon Musk is a part of the government and Zuckerberg now wants to stop censoring on Facebook, and Jeff Bezos has looked at the Washington Post and said, we need to be more journalist, that the tech industrial complex is taking over. Now, as we said, by the definition of what a military industrial complex was and moving it to a tech industrial complex, it doesn't even fit what the definition is. Because the definition would be of a tech industrial complex that so much taxpayer dollars are going to support that industry that they have a harmful influence on government. And as we explained to you when Eisenhower talked about it, you had 10% of the GDP of taxpayer, 10% of the entire GDP was taxpayer dollars going to the military. And therefore, when that money's flowing back and forth, the fear was that the military contractors would have too much influence on government policy and even military policy. And I said it doesn't even fit because in this tech industrial complex that they're talking about, the opposite is happening. The billionaires are saying, hey, the tech companies that we own, we don't like the fact that, they were, Elon Musk, in fact, Elon Musk specifically bought X to stop the censoring, to stop the cooperation between liberals and Democrats and their private companies to censor Americans. So, as I said, it makes no sense. You can destroy their argument. The next one is, because Biden brought it up in the speech, and now the liberals are jumping on it. And the funny thing is, they get all excited. Oh, we found something new. Oh, we got a new word. We got a new phrase. We could use it. And this is where Republicans need to do their homework and attack back. And you had yesterday the Treasury Secretary nominee, Scott Bessent, who had some great moments. This wasn't one of his best, but I think probably, Biden had did the oligarchy, the tech industrial complex, and maybe he wasn't expecting that question. But even so, he started on it, and then Sanders was like, let's move to something else. Because Sanders knows, he's not dumb. Sanders knows he can't win this argument. Let me play what he said yesterday, and then we'll tear it apart piece by piece, limb by limb.
When you have a small number of multi-billionaires who have enormous economic, media, and political power, would you agree with President Biden, who last night stated, and I quote, "An oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights, and freedoms," end of quote. That's what President Biden said last night. I agree with him. Do you?
Senator Sanders, I enjoyed our visit.
Talk a little bit closer into the mic.
I enjoyed our visit, and I hope you got my follow-up materials on the discussions, my previous writings on the tariffs and China. And look, the three billionaires who you listed that all made the money themselves. Mr. Musk came to the country as an immigrant.
I understand that, but what I'm asking you is, when you have a handful of people like Musk, who will soon be part of the Trump administration, and others, when you have three people owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society, when these people have enormous influence over the media, when they spend huge amounts of money in both political parties to elect candidates, what Biden said last night is we're moving toward an oligarchy. I'm asking you that question. Do you think, forget how they made their money, do you think that when so few people have so much wealth and so much economic and political power, that that is an oligarchic form of society?
Well, I would note that President Biden gave the Presidential Medal of Freedom to two people who I think would qualify for his oligarchs. So
this is not a condemnation of any one individual. I'm just asking, when so few people have so much wealth and power,
but
do you think that that is an oligarchic form of society?
Senator, I think it depends on the ability to move up and down the income.
No, that's not really the answer. I mean, even if you had that mobility, no matter who those individuals might be. All right, but let me ask you another question.
See, so he moved right on from it. Now, that's not the point. The Senate didn't hit the point. And we're going to help out the Trump administration and the nominees if this continues to come up, just like we did with the tech industrial complex. What's an oligarchy? What's the definition? What's the meaning of it? And we know Democrats change definitions all the time, but definitions define a word. An oligarchy, we go to Oxford. A country governed, a small group of people having control of a country. That's what an oligarchy is. Is that what is happening? Does it change the power base in the country, or is it simply part, for example, Musk, as a private sector advisor to cut spending? Does that fit the definition of an oligarchy? Or Zuckerberg saying, you know something, it was wrong for us because the government, the liberals in government and the Democrats in government pressured us to censor Americans and censor other forms of media, the New York Post. And we believe that's wrong, and we believe that the people should have much more of an influence in social media. Does that fit the definition of an oligarchy, which is, again, a small group of people having control of a country? And being rich can be a part of that. No, it doesn't fit it. It doesn't change, for example, the three branches of government. It does not change the separation of power. You know, the separation of powers, as we've talked about in the Constitution, you know, people talk about, you know, the amendments and everything else. That's actually the most important part, in my opinion, of the Constitution, is the separation of powers, not letting any any branch of government become too powerful. You don't want the concentration of power to become too great. The least of my concerns are Elon Musk, Bezos, and Zuckerberg at this moment. If you want to look at the political party which wishes to move us closer to an oligarchy based on the definition of a small group of people having control of the country, it would be Democrats. Democrats are constantly trying to destroy the separation of powers. Congress has done it more of a part in destroying the balance of power. Congress, through their legislation at times, has given the executive branch more power than the executive branch should have. The Democrats trying, you know, on the Supreme Court to add, you know, keep adding, their whole goal, let's just keep adding Supreme Court justices. If we take over, let's put in the Supreme Court justices that will do our bidding and just make it larger and larger and larger and larger and larger and larger and larger. And so it doesn't fit the definition of an oligarchy, and the party trying to make power, the power base in the government, smaller has been Democrats. When you had, and this would have been my other response to Sanders, you didn't complain about an oligarchy when Twitter and Facebook, when the FBI was involved and the government, the liberal government, even the opposition to Trump inside of his own administration that were liberals and Democrat supporters, and then during the Biden administration screaming bloody murder, that freedom of speech is being weakened because of disinformation and the recent craziness of Zuckerberg coming out and saying, we're going to go to community notes because we find out that the fact checkers out there are basically political activists with a bias. And so we want the masses to be able to, the masses will be able to correct it. The billionaires, it seems, wish to move away from any possibility of being an oligarchy because they believe we were moving closer to it when the government was coercing them to censor. And that's how they should answer. Because Biden, because Sanders can't win the argument. So you need to pound on it. So the tech industrial complex, sorry, can't make that case. Oligarchy under Trump, can't make that case. And Sanders was trying to say, well, it doesn't matter who's in government. Sure it does. You weren't screaming about the oligarchy during the Biden administration when the censoring was still continuing and the government was coercing X and Facebook to promote what they believe and censor what they don't believe. Sanders is an absolute hypocrite. So the power base is still there. The power the power base of the separation of powers is still the same. You have an executive branch. You've got an executive branch, and you've got a legislative branch, and you have the judicial branch. And you didn't hear Sanders screaming about the influence of George Soros. He's all for what George Soros did. It's not about an oligarchy. It is about the fact that they don't like the fact that you've got some billionaires out there that are saying government attempting to coerce us on social media to censor is wrong. They want government to censor. You didn't hear Sanders screaming bloody murder when the Biden administration wanted to have their own disinformation department. Thank God public opinion shot that one down, and the person they picked to run it was one of the biggest purveyors of disinformation. So, Republicans, there you go. We helped you with that one. You can pound on this. We've got a whole bunch more of audio cuts coming up. Oh, man, what a great day it was yesterday. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Managing time is key. Successful owner-operators know that simply running hard is not enough. If it were that easy, anyone could do the job and expect the profits to roll in. It generally pays to slow down. There is a trade-off in higher costs, not to mention the increased risk for driving fast. If driving slower takes time away from you, you could find some of the ways to get it back. Never take time off during the last 2 weeks of the quarter or the last week of the month, when freight typically is abundant. Sometimes it works to your advantage to look for loads that take you through home rather than to home. The latter can interrupt your revenue stream and require additional time to get back up to full speed again. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Let's go to Bill in San Antonio about oligarchies and the tech industrial complex and more. Bill in San Antonio, hi. Welcome. Hi, Bill.
Hey.
Oh, we lost Bill. Oh, Bill was there. I know what he was going to say, so let me just let you know. He was said, the Democrats talk about an oligarchy, but, Soros's influence on the Democratic Party was huge, which is true. But the fact is, even Soros wasn't part of an oligarchy. Soros didn't make the United States an oligarchy, or any of the billionaires that support Democrats. You just had the example in the last election. Soros lost. You see how many of Soros's DA picks across the country lost. We all knew what they were going to do. The people of the United States, not conservatives, not the vast majority of Republicans, didn't vote for these DAs in there, but liberals did. We also found out again, money doesn't win elections. Harris and Biden spent way more money than Trump did. Hillary spent more money than Trump did. What won? The message. Soros's message and Soros's money had an effect in that the message was bought by a bunch of people who were foolish. who now have changed their minds. Many of them changed their minds, and these DAs have been kicked out. But it's still not an oligarchy. And that's the one thing that we have found out. Over the last couple of years, what we have found out is the liberal media has lost its power because the public understands they're being lied to and things are being censored. And also we found out money doesn't win elections. Where you stand on the issues and articulating your stance on the issues, that's what matters. And being credible.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen to our podcast if you can't listen live overnight. Yeah, a lot of people. And that's the one thing, I mean, because Eric and I have been on the air way before podcast existed. And, you know, there were a lot of people. I'll never forget the people that, we don't get this really anymore, the people that worked overnight or whatever, and they went on days. They said, we can't listen to you anymore. We just can't listen to you. Now they can through the podcast. Somebody put on Facebook the other day, or not on Facebook, on X the other day, that get the Red Eye Radio app because Gary said it's free for the first 3 months. It's always free. and they were being sarcastic. But I just want to make sure that nobody takes that legitimately. There is no charge, okay? We don't charge you after 3 months. I was just doing that. I was talking about the new DirecTV, the sporting package, and how it's not completely a la carte where you can pick any station you want, but they had like just a sports package, and it was like, it's $49.99 for the first 3 months. And I was screaming, saying, I don't care what it is the first 3 months. What does it cost after the first 3 months? And nowhere in the story, did it say it. So then I just came up and said, by the way, get our Red Eye Radio app free for the first 3 months. And it is, but it's also free for the next 3 months, and the next 3 months after that, and the next 3 months after that. So there you go. Look, we got to have fun because this is really the last day of the last full weekday of the Biden administration. And I just love some of the discussion going on. See the story where it says Kamala Harris feels hurt, feels bad that Biden said that he would have won, he believes he would have won the election. Now, we said that, I believe it was Eric who said it first. He said, mark my word. And so this goes back to the summer. Mark my word, if she loses, Biden's going to say, I would have won. Because how do you disprove it? And therefore, they'll feel good about it. It's not a lie if you believe it. George Costanza. But the story is Vice President Kamala Harris is disappointed that Joe Biden claimed he could have beaten Donald Trump after she failed to do so. People familiar with the conversation told the Wall Street Journal. Harris's disappointment follows years of defending the president against allegations of his deteriorating mental acuity, never disclosing any information that Team Biden did not want aired publicly. Yeah, she's a liberal. She goes, I lied for you. I lied for you. And now you're saying you would have won and I didn't win. Oh, wow. I just love it. So, of course, I'm looking for just things that entertain me. But we're always looking for things that entertain us. And Kevin O'Leary was on CNN this week. And, the talk goes back to, because liberals are going to be talking about this for the longest time. I want to focus. We always will be focusing on the present and the actual, legislation and things that each party wishes to do and criticize or compliment based on the substance of what they're promoting. But this was just great on CNN. Kevin O'Leary on with the panel on CNN about Kamala Harris. Here we go.
It reminds me of a moment we were together months ago, and maybe it's time for me to ask for an apology when I suggested to everybody here that we should have run a process rather than just grant Kamala Harris her ability to run without a democratic process. She got slaughtered in the election.
I don't
Please, you can apologize to me now. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, I wasn't there. I wouldn't apologize to you then or now.
Look, I think that I remember this conversation, and
I'm right now. Am I not?
You kept saying that it was unconstitutional when my point was, and I think the facts are, that the Democrats can run whatever process or lack of process that they want. They did what they did. They paid the price for it, but they are entitled to do that. That's just how the system works.
Is that an apology?
Here.
Yes, no?
No, it's
very much goodness.
not.
If it had worked, it would have been genius, and it failed, so it's an orphan, and nobody wants to take the blame. And nobody could have
but she
predicted
also
that
took the Democratic brand down 15 points.
She was the only hope that they had at that moment for them to win.
It was already too late.
It was already too late.
Yes,
At that moment, that was the best decision because they had already blown
This time, maybe she can
by the way,
run
she
to
didn't
see
get
if she can.
slaughtered. It's not like he won a majority.
I bet she has no chance of ever having leadership of the Democratic
There's a lot
Party
more to
again.
get to.
Did you enjoy that as much as I did? No, it wasn't unconstitutional, but it was not the democratic process that the Democratic Party set up. And remember, I remember a Democrat delegate who called us and said he's not voting. He's not voting for Harris because of it. And he told us, he said, no, they're not abiding by the rules that the Democratic Party has set up. And so, yeah, it's not unconstitutional. It wasn't illegal because it's rules. But the fact is, the Democratic Party said, to hell with the primary process. To hell with the delegates. To hell with Democrats. We don't care what you think. We're going to do what we're going to do. And except for that delegate, I don't know any of my Democrat acquaintances that were upset about it. They're upset now because they lost, but they weren't upset about it at all. They didn't care. Democrats didn't care. And I'm talking about the rank and file voter. They didn't care. They just said, okay, this will get us the win. Because you can't live in the bubble of, well, the Democrats were living in the bubble of that moment. They weren't looking at, because remember, the first couple of weeks after it was like, oh, she's great, she's awesome, she's great. And she wasn't. And we were saying, she's not awesome. Listen to them BS themselves. Democrats BS themselves consistently until the end. I'm telling you, it was a George Costanza moment. They all knew it was BS. It's not a lie if you believe it. And so they BS themselves. Oh, yeah, she's great. She's great. They knew she wasn't great. And so after the first 2 weeks, then they saw her problems. And then, remember, at first, Democrats, well, she doesn't have to talk. People know where the Democratic Party stands. She doesn't have to do interviews. The media will set her up. Yeah, that's because the media has been totally fair to Donald Trump. Totally fair, right? And then you saw the evolution of it. And a month later, you didn't see this huge support. It was like, why doesn't she do interviews? Why doesn't she do interviews? Why can't she articulate a simple point? What's going on? Maybe this wasn't the best thing to do. And then all disaster hit, as we saw. But we knew it. We told you it. And then this is one of my favorite ones. Because this is probably one of the last times we're going to be able to talk about the actual election. Because we're going to be moving on and actually talking about what the current event is of that day. Remember, well, this is great because she can win because there's such a short time that she doesn't need to talk to the media, and that's a good policy, and then Democrats would win. And so we need that. Then it became, after she lost, well, there was just such a short time, she couldn't explain herself to the American people. She didn't have time to explain herself to the American people. And the total narrative changed completely. We don't want her to have a lot of time because then she'll be able to win. And then it was, well, she didn't have enough time to explain herself to the American people as someone who didn't want to explain herself to the American people. I mean, the Democrats, the last 6 months have been a Costanza moment constantly. It's not a lie if you believe it. All right, what else do we got? Because I'm just looking at all the audio that we have to play here, and we'll be jumping around a little bit. One of the things that Eric and I have been talking about this week is, with the nomination hearings, Democrats can't argue the issues. And when they try, they get destroyed. They get absolutely destroyed. It's J6. It's, do you believe Trump won 2020? It's really amazing to watch this. And then they dare to enter any particular issue, and they get destroyed, and they quickly want to change the topic to something else. It's just, if you're a Democrat and you're being intellectually honest, you're looking at this party right now going, where the hell did we go? But this was a moment, and this was, this was one of the witnesses. The Senate was discussing the Laken Riley Act, and this was one of the witnesses that was brought forward of a pro-illegal immigrant activist movement. And this is good Josh Hawley. There's bad Josh Hawley. By the way, he put together a video this week where he said, nope, we should increase the child tax credit to $5,000. And if you don't pay any taxes but you pay Social Security, you should be able to get money from the government. We're absolutely against that. That's bad, Josh Hawley. No, do not create another welfare system within the tax system. If you want to hand out welfare and call it welfare. So that was bad, Josh Hawley. This is good, Josh Hawley.
Wrote, the murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime like it's an actual issue. That'd be Laken Riley you were talking about?
Laken Riley was an unusual case.
Yeah, here, let's have a look. Here's Laken Riley.
Yes.
Her murder, her horrific murder at the hands of this illegal migrant who was also unlawfully paroled in the United States. Her death, not an actual issue?
It's a tragedy.
But not an actual issue?
Migrant crime is much less of an issue than U.S. citizen committed crime.
Not an actual issue? Those are your words. Her death, not an actual issue. I just want to get, no, you say.
Of course it's an issue. It's a tragedy.
So what do you mean by your post? It's not an actual issue, meaning we shouldn't be paying attention to it. Senate's wasting its time this week on the Laken Riley Act that would address the circumstances of her murder. What's your advice to us? We just discontinue those proceedings now?
I think the Laken Riley Act could do a lot of harm. It would allow me to say, oh, this person shoplifted, and that would be enough probable cause to get somebody deported.
Interesting. You're here. Who invited you to this committee hearing today, Mr. Isaacson?
The minority party.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're here as a spokesman for the minority party. I just want to make sure the record's clear on this. The spokesman for the minority party is advising the Senate that the Laken Riley Act is a bad idea and we ought to stop it. The spokesman for the minority party is saying that Laken Riley's death and migrant crime is not an actual issue. I can't frankly believe that I am hearing these words. You said it's not an actual issue. I read you the quote.
Laken Riley's death was not an actual issue.
You said that the murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime. You put it in quotation marks, square quotes, like it's an actual issue.
You're not going to win that. 866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. Good morning. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has a personal day today. It's you and me. Coming up, a couple more comments on the whole oligarchy thing, and one of the greatest things that has happened really over the last couple of years in this country during the Biden administration, and it's because of the Biden administration. It wasn't their intent, but still it's because of the Biden administration. We'll get to that. Plus the great opportunity that Republicans have here, especially on the issues, because it seems like the public have become, issue-oriented. It's not the rhetoric anymore. It's not falling for hope and change. It's like, okay, who's going to get the job done? And the great opportunity that Republicans have, if they communicate effectively, to just destroy the narrative of Democrats. And we'll give you an example, another example, and this was part of the Senate hearing with the Treasury Secretary nominee yesterday, and the BS that Senator Wyden tried to throw out, and it's pure BS. And again, it may be his Costanza moment. It's not a lie if you believe it, but that's coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America. We are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has a morning off. It's me and you. 866-90 Red Eye. So here we are. The last full weekday of the Biden administration. One of the best things that has happened over the last couple of years, two things. First off, it's obvious that money does not control elections anymore, does not control presidential elections. I'm not saying it doesn't have an impact. If you've got the right message, well, then you can win. But it's sort of always been that way with money. But as we've seen, whether it was Hillary and Trump or Kamala and Trump, Trump spent a lot less money and still won. The message wins. Even early in the Trump administration, when we would say Republicans and Trump need to communicate better, people would argue with us. We'd say, stick to the issues. Stop with the side issues. Stop with the things that don't matter. We got pushback. I believe the campaign that he has just run and what he is doing right now proves that we were right. Not that, that doesn't come from ego. It comes from, duh. You find the 4 or 5 things that people really care about, and you pound them and you argue them with Democrats that have an insane position on the issue. And so we were pretty frustrated for a while, but Republicans and Trump, this is a different Trump than was going into office back in 2017. And it's a good thing. And we all learn. And it seems like Republicans have learned, because as we said, this wasn't just a Trump thing. Republicans weren't communicating effectively, and they're communicating much more effectively now. I want to play this here because this is part of the delusion. Oh, before we do that, though, the other thing is free speech. The recognition of liberals wanting to censor. The public has seen through that. And that's wonderful. You know, with Sanders that we had played earlier, Bernie Sanders, talking about the oligarchy and the tech industrial complex, and just shaking your head going, come on, guys, stop it. You've got nothing, so you're throwing out words and labels that really don't have any meaning because you're not using the definition of the words. But what you have seen free speech-wise is wonderful. And what you've seen from Elon Musk, wonderful. Wonderful stuff. Zuckerberg, whether he truly believes in the direction that he is going or not, whether it's what he truly believes or a business decision or is afraid of the Trump administration, whatever it is, it's still a positive. He's moving in the direction of not letting the government and specifically Democrats attempt to censor, not just attempt, but successfully censor the truth and censor the news. You know, I saw Jim Acosta yesterday. He just can't get off it. The press is not an enemy of the people, not an enemy of the people, not an enemy of the people. When you lie to the public, when you say you're a journalist and you're a political activist, then what are you? Are you a friend of the people? When you promote yourself as one thing, but it's so self-evident that you are not, where the public lose trust in you and your ratings have been flushed down the toilet, down through the sewage system, all the way to the sewage treatment plant. Are you a friend of the people? I would say not. As you see, though, Democrats, they believe this is something else that they've just pounded on over the last couple of weeks. Democrats are using the rhetoric of Republicans and not the substance behind the rhetoric. Trump said, enemy of the people. We're not an enemy of the people. We're not an enemy of the people. All right. Well, okay, but what is it based on when Trump says that? What is it based on? And that's why I just went through what I went through. Are you a friend of the people? When you tell them that you are fair, that your goal is just to report the news, and it's obvious and self-evident that you do not, which is why you have no ratings, and why the poll numbers on the media, especially television, are so incredibly low. That now the question is, I saw Wolf Blitzer's going to mornings. But NBC, we got to get rid of MSNBC. CNN, we don't know what we're going to do. There's nothing, we can't rehabilitate it. We have been leftist political activists for such a long time, we can't save ourselves any longer. Remember, everything anybody knew would come into CNN. Well, we have to be more news. We have to be this. We have to be that. We have to be this. What you're finding out, I mean, the reality is, and this is a good thing, I think, people are getting so much of their news Well, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, people are getting their news when they wish to get their news. They're not waiting for news anymore. You don't have a lot of people saying, I need to wait. It's 3 p.m., and I'm not going to look anywhere else. I'm waiting for the 6 p.m. newscast. No, they go online and they get it. What has happened during the Biden administration? There's a lot of good because it's the blowback about what they did. People are getting their news from the internet. People are getting their news from social media. Is it always accurate? No. But neither is what's coming from the government. Think about this. Most of us don't pay. I pay for a couple of websites. I pay for the Wall Street Journal to get their editorial page, and I pay for National Review because of the freedom that the writers have there to promote conservative principles. Do I always agree with it? No. I think Eric has a subscription if I need something from the Free Press, which is Barry Weiss's new website. I think, yeah, Eric has the subscription, so if I need anything from that one, if I go on and I hit the paywall, just ask Eric. But for the vast majority of news, I don't pay for it. There's nothing that, you pay for, and you don't wait for it. You get it when you want it. And is there disinformation, misinformation out there? Yep. But I'm an old man, and I'm able to find the truth very quickly, within seconds. And so can you. They don't have a monopoly anymore on the news. They don't. And that is a good thing. And they're scared to death because they hate it when Elon Musk says, we are the media. The left goes crazy. The leftist media goes crazy. Well, we're the people with the experience and blah, 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 blah. And, we're the professionals and we went to school for this, blah, 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 blah. Shut up. You're a bunch of wacko liberal political activists pretending to be journalists. It's funny because we've always got the opposite. Eric and I, our bias is huge. We're conservative libertarian. We don't hide it. And I can't tell you how many people have told us over the years, I like it because you guys are fair and give both sides. And we sort of do, but they make it seem like we're not biased, and we are biased. But we explain to you our biases, and we don't lie to you. We don't sit there and say, we have no bias at all. Of course we do. But we explain our bias. We explain why we call ourselves conservative libertarians. And that's all people want. I talked about my Uncle Norm. And he's been dead for over 20 years. But when I first became a radio talk show host, he used to listen all the time. And we had differences in opinions. My father's younger brother. And he was more liberal, not real liberal, but more liberal, and promoted himself as a Democrat. And he told me one time, because I knew he listened all the time. And, my cousins, his daughters still tell me, oh, he listened to you all the time, And he told me, he said, I don't agree with a lot of what you say, but you explain how you have come to your opinion. And when you explain it, I realize that your opinion does have a good moral base behind it, even if I disagree with it. And that was great to hear from an uncle who I really respected. He was the uncle that he was the one that got me to love hockey. He really was. He was a really good goalie, too, in his younger days. And I think people don't care if you have a bias as long as you can explain it, as long as you don't lie about it. And I don't understand why the left can't figure out. Bernard Goldberg said it in his book Bias. He said they don't view themselves as liberal, they view themselves as right. And they live in their own bubble. They live in their own bubble of liberal thought, liberal media thought in Washington and New York. And they hang around with the same people who have that same thought process. And so they actually view it as, oh, there's left, there's right, and then there's us, and we're right. And that's how they convince themselves that they're not biased, that they're just right. Well, come on. There's a little bit of delusion in there, is there not? I mean, I'm self-aware. I know what I am. I know what I do. I promote opinions, strong opinions that I believe, and I tell you why, just like Eric does. It's not complicated. Now, whether they know they're BSing you or not is inside their mind, or whether they actually buy their own argument, whether, again, it's the George Costanza mindset, it's not a lie if you believe it, I don't know. But the public sees it, and that's why the public isn't watching it as much anymore. And that's why the public and their opinion of the media has gone down so much. So there's a lot of positives out there in this country right now. There's a lot of optimism. And maybe we had to get to that point where I view the low point probably was 2020 and 2021. But there are always been ebbs and flows in political thought. And my hope is that we're moving in the right direction, and I'm optimistic that we slowly are on a lot of different things, sometimes by necessity. You know, for example, if you look at government spending, the American public really hasn't been against government spending over the last 50 years. They really haven't. They say they are because it's bad and debt is bad, but what really is changing people's minds is their own self-interest. They've personally been affected by it because of inflation. And that is a problem that the Democrats have. That now the policies that were all basically hypothetical, if we do this, this will happen. Well, now they can't say it anymore because it's not an abstract concept, or the abstract concept that they were promoting to you, the hypothetical, has now become the reality, and people say that hasn't worked. We've got some great audio coming up next. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Me and you. All right, here we go. This is from yesterday, Senator Ron Wyden. Oh, man. Talking with Treasury Secretary nominee Scott Bessent. We'll just play it. Here we go.
The more you reduce carbon, the bigger your tax savings. Now there is a big effort in the Trump administration to reverse it. I think that's going to be bad for the economy, but it is going to be damn good for China because we are in an arms race on clean energy with them. Are you going to be on the side of people who want to unravel this?
Senator Wyden, just so we can frame this for everyone in the room, China will build 100 new coal plants this year. There is not a clean energy race. There is an energy race. China will build 10 nuclear plants this year. That is not solar. I am in favor of more nuclear plants. And I would note that the IRA, as scored by the CBO, is wildly out of control in terms of spending on the upside.
Does Ron Wyden really believe that? Do you think Ron Wyden really believes that? Is he that much, excuse my labeling here, is he that much of an idiot where he actually believes that there's a clean energy war and competition between China and the United States? That subsidizing inconsistent forms of energy that must be backed up with traditional energy that skyrockets the cost to the consumer is the actual energy war that's going on out there? Does Ron Wyden actually believe that? Is he that delusional? Does he not understand the simple concept? Because it's pretty simple. It's not hard to understand. Wind. Oh, the wind dies down. What do we do? Solar. It's night. Does he really believe the delusional statement that he made?
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has taken a personal day today, so it's me and you. 866-90 Red Eye. So, yeah, we had played Ron Wyden before talking about that there's a clean energy war going on between the United States and China, which is just delusional. Absolutely delusional. Talk about delusional, though, on things like energy. Doug Burgum, the nominee for the Secretary of Interior, had his nomination hearing also this week. This is a question coming from Senator Angus King of Maine, who is an independent. That's his affiliation. But if you know his background, is a far left and on a few issues might call a little moderate senator. But absolutely delusional when it comes to things like energy and the environment. And to give you a little background to make my point, in 2011, he said, oil and trees are not ours to use up in our generation. Oil and trees are not ours to use up in our generation. That is was a delusional mindset back then and is a delusional mindset now. We're not running out of trees. We're not close to running out of trees. And we're not close to running out of oil. When Eric and I started together back in 2005, you had 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008 probably, where there was the talk of peak oil. Since we paid attention to the research that was out there, we knew that was false. And we stated it was false. And we would have early on in our show together. This was even before, Red Eye started, because Eric and I have been together 20 years this July. Red Eye is what, 12, 13 years old? Eric and I have been on Red Eye that long. We knew it, but we would get calls from people. You guys are denying peak oil. There's peak oil. We're running out of oil. Well, we weren't running out of oil. And we knew it. By the time we got to 2011, nobody was talking about we're running out of oil, except Democrats were still on that one. And that's where Angus King was in 2011. And so that mindset of peak oil kept on for a while because it was the Democrats' way of saying we're running out of oil. They loved the whole peak oil argument because we're running out of oil. Therefore, we have to go to solar and wind. It's not just climate change. We've got to go to solar and wind because we're running out of oil. So Angus King talking about wind and solar to Doug Burgum yesterday. I'm playing the audio cut here. Okay, thanks. Here we go.
Would you agree that renewable resources, solar and wind, for example, can be developed if they are adequately, if they can be integrated into the grid in a safe and reliable way?
Yes, they can, and it's not for me personally for any political reasons that I distinguish. It's just because of physics, the physics of the grid. If we don't have enough base load, and it's the base load that we have that's allowed our nation to make the investments into the intermittent.
I don't want the word. In a former life, I developed both base load and intermittent resources. I don't want the word base load to be code for no renewables. That's not what you're saying, is it?
No, we need a balance, but they cannot. The intermittent, if you want to call them renewables, is used as a positive word, but this is a fact of life, is they're intermittent. And when they're intermittent, until we have storage solutions, and we're years away from having significant enough cost-effective storage to support that, we need to have the base load, or the intermittent doesn't even have a life.
So my question again, are Democrats stupid? Or are they just plain stupid? Because it's not hard to explain. And the fact that Burgum has to explain to an 80-year-old man who has been in politics for a long, 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 long time, the fact of physics and electrical generation, that if something is intermittent, it has to be backed up. There has to be a base load that's always there. Why does anybody have to explain that to somebody who is a senator of the United States? So I go back to 2011 when Angus King said basically we can't be using up all of our oil and trees in one generation, which again was delusional back then. Does he actually believe that? And this is where I think you have to attack even greater, because the argument is very simple. I will use the state of Texas. Because of the subsidies, wind power on a good day can produce 60% of the electricity that Texas needs. On the best wind day, 60%. You're like, wow, that's wonderful. On a bad day, 0. And we had those bad days. We go back to Frizola, as we call it here on the show, in February of 2021. We didn't have the baseline power. We did not have the reserves. Solar wasn't going. Wind wasn't going. We are not making it up when we say when Biden ran in 2020, he ran on we can run the grid on solar and wind only. That is an insane policy that only gets you to economic and energy destruction. Why would Democrats actually promote something that is committing economic, energy, and national security suicide? Why would they? You didn't see Democrats arguing. Now, the argument here from Angus King in this particular segment with Doug Burgum is, are you saying that alternative energy has no part whatsoever? And the politically correct answer is, no, it all has a part. Well, as long as it has a part, and this is one of the things I want, and that's intellectual honesty. We could run the entire grid consistently on nuclear, natural gas, and coal completely. There would never be, you wouldn't need any backups that weren't being used. You could run the entire grid on that. 24/7, 365. That's just, as Burgum said, that's the reality. That's physics. That's the science of electrical production. Every one of you understands that. Every one of you understands if you attempted to run our grid on just solar and wind, economic and energy catastrophe. We are hurting our nation, and that's what Biden ran on. Now, once Biden became president, they realized, okay, the average person realizes we're idiots for promoting it, so throw in nuclear. But the problem with nuclear is, where do you put it with the NIMBY effect? Where do you put it? Natural gas plants, people will say yes. Nuclear still is a tough sell. The other thing is, because Angus Young is saying, well, and Burgum even said, well, yeah, it can be a part of it. If it becomes a part of it, for whatever reason you wish wind and solar to become part of the grid, costs will go up for the consumer. Why do Democrats lie and say alternative forms of energy are cheaper and will be cheaper? Newsom says it all the time in California. Why the lie? Just tell us the truth. Why do you have to lie about an issue? If it's good, why are you lying about it? Why can't you be intellectually honest? But as we know, for the longest time during Biden's run for office in 2020, we played it. He said it to people in his campaign speeches and his campaign debates. No fossil fuels, none, no nuclear. Solar and wind is what he promoted. That is pure insanity and would only create economic, energy, and national security suicide. And the public wasn't too upset. No Democrat complained about that at all. Angus King didn't complain about it. Nobody complained about it. No one on the Democrat side. The Democrats were okay with the United States committing economic, energy, and national security suicide. Because it can't be done. And they went with it. Good God, it had to be the entire campaign, because I believe it was after Trump or after Biden was elected where he said, well, okay, we'll throw in nuclear too. Because it was a big deal when that happened. in conservative circles. Okay, they're throwing in nuclear. But they want to get rid of natural gas. They want natural gas gone, as you know, and coal, they want gone. Why would you do that? What is the purpose of the Democrats wanting to commit economic, energy, and national security suicide? That's one of the things we talked about when there was an article talking about what's stupid. Stupid is when you promote something that hurts you and what your goal is for elected office, in essence, and also hurts the public. You get no benefit out of it, and the public gets no benefit out of it. Why would you be that stupid? Why would you do that? 866-90-RED-EYE.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley. He's got the morning off. I'm Gary McNamara. I don't. Coming up, the last poll on Biden. I'm just reading this headline here. Joy Behar mourns Biden leaving office. I miss him already. Hey, The View's going to be fun to watch, isn't it? You think they'll become unhinged once or twice? You know the best thing I saw in the last couple of days? Well, one of the best headlines. It was the headline and then the response to it. This headline, millions of dollars of Hunter Biden's artwork destroyed in L.A. fires. And all the responses are like, we sense insurance fraud is coming up. They better file for it before Trump becomes president. Oh, my gosh. Millions of dollars of Hunter Biden's artwork destroyed by L.A. fires. Who is doing the appraisals? Is Hunter going to have immunity? That was so funny to read that. But just the headline to begin with, oh my gosh, that was, and that was a legit, that was not the Babylon Bee. Coming up following the top of the hour, the White House press corps upset at Karine Jean-Pierre at her last press conference. Well, where the hell have you been the last 4 years?
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Me and you today. I got caught. I was reading stuff. There's so much going on. I mean, it really, really is. I was telling Eric, I said, it's okay. There's so much stuff I could talk for 5 weeks. So let's get right to it. This is one of my favorite stories of the day. And it's sort of a duh. Journalist and aides to President Biden. Journalist and aides to President Biden are seething over White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre's refusal to let a national security expert discuss the tentative Israeli-Hamas ceasefire at her final briefing on Wednesday, deeming the occasion her goodbye party. The press secretary's spotlight stealing forced the nation to wait an extra hour to learn the details of the American hostages being released, including their names, with Jean-Pierre herself providing no new information at her 306th and last briefing, and referring reporters to the National Security Council call that got underway after she left the stage. The background here. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan personally asked his top spokesperson, John Kirby, a former press secretary at both the Pentagon and the State Department, to take the lectern moments after Biden announced the long-sought deal and cast it as a signature achievement for his team. Sullivan made the request of the White House chief of staff, but Jean-Pierre refused to allow it, citing her own prearranged plans to celebrate herself, two sources told the New York Post. She basically said it was her goodbye party. She kind of marketed it as a celebration of her and her tenure. And unfortunately, that took precedent over huge breaking news. And we haven't had this kind of news in this administration for a long time. And that came from someone inside the Biden administration. Jean-Pierre spent 51 minutes skirting the details about the looming end of the war in Gaza as exasperated journalists waited to learn the names of 2 U.S. citizens who are set to be released in the first wave of prisoner exchanges as early as Sunday. A handful of former press office aides looked on, including Jean-Pierre's predecessor, Jen Psaki, giving the gathering the feel of a family reunion as Jean-Pierre became emotional talking about her tenure. A journalist told the Post they spotted expensive bottles of champagne on Jean-Pierre's West Wing desk after the briefing, apparently for a boozy staff send-off, though the press secretary herself does not drink. The first source said, I thought at the last minute that she would just break and say, okay, fine, Kirby can just come at the top and he can leave, and then I can wax poetic about my time here, and then I don't really even have to answer any questions and be grilled on anything, the first source said. But she really wanted to make the point that the briefing room was hers, and so that's why she pushed so much, and in the end, she feels like she won, and I guess she kind of did. The source said she looks silly, and God help her in whatever she does next, but in this personal battle that she's had with the former White House communications staff, Anita Dunn and Kirby, for the entirety of her time in the press briefing room, I know she considers it a win. The press corps and West Wing staff have been well aware of Jean-Pierre's prickly feelings towards Kirby, whom she regards as a rival, due in part to his authoritative role-speaking on the Middle East war and his free admission that he'd be interested in capping his career with a stint as the White House press secretary. Dunn, who departed the Biden White House last year, tried to get Jean-Pierre to leave her position in late 2023, viewing her as frequently unprepared and not a good spokesperson for Biden's re-election bid, and she enlisted outside Democrats to nudge her out the door. Kirby, who was at the time widely viewed as Jean-Pierre's successor in waiting due to his steady performance, helming White House briefings on the Israeli-Hamas conflict. Not allowing actual news to be delivered from the podium on such an important day for the president and the world for your own ego is disgraceful, a longtime Biden aide told the Post about Jean-Pierre's antics. Quote, again, this is a Biden aide. I'm not sure there is someone that did more damage to the president's reputation than her. It's really sad. I would just like to tell our Democrat friends that really since the election was lost by Kamala Harris and Biden was kicked out by Democrats, that almost every accusation that we have made of Biden, of Karine Jean-Pierre, of anybody in the administration and Democrats as a whole over the last 4 years has been confirmed by Democrats. So as this longtime Biden aide said, I'm not sure there is someone that did more damage to the president's reputation than Karine Jean-Pierre. It is really sad. A second outraged reporter who attended Wednesday's briefing said it was totally unsurprising behavior from someone who was either incapable of recognizing her own shortcomings or unwilling or unable to put in the work required to overcome them. Since Dunn departed the White House chief of staff has taken the lead in managing the briefing room rivalry between Jean-Pierre and Kirby, who has appeared less frequently in that time. One source said the chief of staff was known for bringing West Wing staff bagels on Wednesday and pizza on Fridays, manning a margarita machine in his office, and declaring Jeans Day when Biden is out of town, that he was intimidated by the situation. Jean-Pierre has at times threatened to call in powerful allies such as the Reverend Al Sharpton to back her up. Look, she was a DEI hire, and that's why they couldn't fire her. And so since she was a DEI hire, who do you bring in? Who do you threaten the administration with in order to keep your position? I'll bring in Al Sharpton. Not like a regular Democrat or somebody in power or Obama or anyone else. We'll bring in Al Sharpton. It's kind of scary for the White House chief of staff, who is a white man, who was like, I don't want this kind of smoke. You notice they don't even mention Biden. Here's the evidence. Biden wasn't running things. He's not mentioned. She's thrown some serious temper tantrums over this kind of stuff. And when Anita left, there was no way Jeff, the chief of staff, was going to have the negotiating skill to bring both of these people to the table and to muscle Kirby back into the briefing room. Nobody was in charge. Everybody just sort of did what they wanted to do. Biden wasn't in charge. The White House spokesperson, Andrew Bates, didn't deny that Sullivan asked for Kirby to join the briefing, saying, like Karine said in the briefing, the administration chose to have an on-record call with Brett McGurk because he was on the ground and could provide firsthand details to the press. Wow. I mean, just you think about it, perfect ending. Absolutely perfect ending. For Karine Jean-Pierre, for Biden, the number of his ending speeches that he did were completely incoherent. I mean, it was perfect. And Karine Jean-Pierre to do this, and the press all ticked off. Well, look, White House press corps, you knew what you had. You didn't challenge her when she was in there. She BS'd you. She gaslighted you. And you, for the most part, took all of it. And you look like a bunch of tools with a few exceptions. So now they're totally upset. She didn't seem to care about the news and the truth. She never did. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, there's more evidence. Yeah, we all knew she was a DEI hire. Think about it. Nobody in the White House would defend her. So she looked always to go to Al Sharpton. I'll bring Al Sharpton in. So let me ask the question. I have to ask it. Was Al Sharpton running the White House? Oh, my gosh. This is the best stuff ever. Because it shows you just how incompetent everyone was in the White House. And everybody knew, and now you've got, the aides, Biden aides, how incompetent she was. Think about this. The Biden aides are saying that they believe she did more damage to the Biden administration than anyone, and her job was to promote him. Oh. Wow. Well, Biden did a little damage himself. I mean, but these are Biden aides. When your spokesperson, when the people closest around to the president are the ones saying that no one did more damage than the person who is supposed to only job is to promote the president in a positive way. That's what you get with the DEI hire. I mean, she was horrible from day one. As I said, what she did accomplish, though, Karine Jean-Pierre, is the fact of she would lie, and the press would know that she was lying. The people watching her on TV knew she was lying. Everyone knew she was lying. She knew that everyone knew that she was lying. And because she was a DEI hire, she could continue that, make a mockery in the opinion of Biden aides of the White House spokesperson, and still keep the job. And Democrats we can't figure out why we lost. Wow. Perfect ending. Perfect. 866-98-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. When driving, you need to manage the space around your vehicle so that there's enough space to allow you to adjust when traffic conditions change. The space ahead of your vehicle is the most important and one of the easiest to monitor and adjust as needed. One rule of thumb is to allow at least 1 second for each 10 feet of vehicle length at speeds below 40 miles per hour. At greater speeds, add an additional second. It's impossible to keep other drivers from tailgating you, but there are some things you can do to make it safer, such as increasing your following distance, avoiding quick lane changes, and slowing down. There are also several things you should do to ensure that there is plenty of space between the side of your vehicle and other vehicles. Don't hug the center line, avoid hugging the right side of the road, and avoid traveling alongside other vehicles in strong winds, especially crosswinds. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Earlier in the show, we had talked about the new phrase and the new word that Democrats are using, and with the tech industrial complex and oligarchy, and to go after Musk and the fact that Zuckerberg now doesn't want wants community notes, and look at Bezos in the Washington Post there, and saying that the billionaires are controlling the government and everything else, and really going after Elon Musk. I mean, they're really going after him. And again, we went point by point about debunking all of those earlier in the show. And if you didn't hear it, when our podcast comes out, you can listen to it, because that's what we started with, right? Yeah, I think so. In the first hour. Well, if we didn't, listen to the podcast until I get there. But it really doesn't matter when it comes to Elon Musk, because Elon Musk has got the Morgan Freeman, got this audio cut here, the Morgan Freeman seal of approval.
I'm a huge fan of Elon Musk's, and I think he's got the most incredibly forward-thinking ideas about where we can go technologically. He's, what he's done is nobody else has ever done. He's landed a rocket ship, so it's reusable. You know what a feat that is? Now we're taking off. We're going to be going to Mars, delivering stuff to people who are going to be settling there, just like they settled the Old West, and bringing those ships back and landing them. And
sorry, I mean, it's over. You cannot win an argument with Morgan Freeman, even if he's not right. You cannot take that voice and the way that he speaks and win an argument. You're always going to be wrong. But he makes some really, really great points there. All right, coming up following the bottom of the hour, the ending polls for Biden, and what are the polls for Trump coming in? We'll have the latest on that. Really interesting to see that the letter that the assistant chiefs and the chiefs wrote to the head fire chief of the L.A. Fire Department. We'll have part of that coming up. And Michael Schellenberger just tearing apart the problems in California. Now, he's done it before, but the fact is, because of the wildfires, more people are paying attention to Michael Schellenberger. Remember, he was part of the Twitter files and all that. That and more coming up.
Navigating the Bizarrosphere. Every night, Eric Harley and Gary McNamara. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off, and I don't. All right. If you think things have been crazy, wait till next week. I think one of the most interesting things that I'm looking forward to is we know how the media has gone crazy, and they lost. They lost the election. And this is an election, and Eric and I have been talking about this for a while. The difference, and we said this a year ago, the difference in this upcoming election that makes it different than any election in our lifetime, maybe except you can make the case for the only thing that would be similar would be Carter and Reagan. And that was because inflation and the lack of confidence in a president when it came to foreign policy. And so you see whatever happens here with the Israel-Hamas, deal. But the fact was the similarities that even the leftist media brought up. In fact, there's an article, we'll get to it, that talked about it yesterday that said, even the left is giving Trump credit for it. Because there's no way you could give Biden credit for it. Everybody knew it. He couldn't get anything done. And so there were similarities, but we said a ways back, this is the first presidential election where you have a number of issues that no longer are hypothetical. It's not Democrats saying, for example, I'll just, if we raise taxes, you will benefit. If we raise the minimum wage, you will benefit. We're going to raise the minimum wage. We're going to tax higher, and we're going to spend more on you. From, you think about it, Obama on is when you heard the term investment. We need to invest. We need to invest. We need to invest. You'll still hear it occasionally, but not as much. And that meant if we spend more taxpayer dollars, the economy will improve. That the government taking your money and putting it where they believe industry and business should go is going to work for you. And they weren't going to stop on the massive spending no matter what. And we saw what happened during COVID. We saw the amount of money that was spent. And what did it do? It caused the inflation that we see today. That's still out there. What was it, 2 days ago, when I first woke up and the inflation numbers were out, I'm like, why are people being optimistic on this? Is it only me? And then more sober minds looked at it and went, okay, no, there's still huge challenges here with inflation. We got a ton of stuff. It's going to be, I look at the incoming Trump administration, and inflation could still be a problem. It's still there. And so whether it comes to tariffs or more spending, this economy right now, very, very, very sensitive and not out of the woods on things that could increase inflation. All depends what they do, though, and we don't know what they're going to do or how how spending is going to be increased versus cutting, whether tariffs are going to be targeted and focused more towards China or what. We don't know yet. That's still all to be seen. But those are challenges that this administration, the incoming administration, faces. But in the election, if you look at that, government spending is no longer an abstract or hypothetical concept. We know what happens if we borrow too much and spend too much. And if the Fed has a policy to print money to buy its own debt in order to keep interest rates low, we see the result of it. And people have felt the massive inflation over the last 3 years. So it's not the same. That's the difference. That was the difference in this election. Same thing with illegal immigration, border issues. Okay, yeah, it was Texas and Arizona that really were where the screaming was. And then Biden got into office and just said, come on in. And DeSantis did it, but it was really Abbott. And even though the federal government moved more migrants around the country, it was the news started paying attention when Abbott did it. And all of a sudden, New York City, Chicago, L.A., major cities, major liberal cities, felt the actual impact of the insanity of the Democrats for years promoting open borders. And they're still doing it today. You know, on the Laken Riley Act, we'd played you earlier, the Josh Hawley talking to the activists that the Democrats brought in saying, look, crime by illegal immigrants, you know, is really no problem. It's not a problem. And he blasted him. And they're still trying to, they still believe they can convince the American people if they say, yes, but the percentage of illegal immigrants that commits crimes is less than the per capita of blah, 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 blah of citizens. Doesn't matter. Those crimes wouldn't happen if they weren't here. You can't win that. And they're still trying to do that. On the vote yesterday, what was it, yesterday or 2 days ago? We still had 145 Democrats when it came to domestic violence or sexual assault say, no, you shouldn't be deported. Wow. You can't win that. When you see the insanity of the radical the radical transgender movement, that 98 to 99% of Democrats in Congress still support in the House. You can't win that. And that's the problem that they have. One point was brought up, it was Scott Jennings, when we played the audio cut yesterday, that said, look, Joe Biden's negatives are huge. He goes out as a failed president. Trump comes in. His numbers are the best they've ever been. And where he stands on the issues even rates higher than him. And that's a problem. So here we go. Over half say the Biden administration made the economy worse. New Fox News poll shows twice as many think the Biden administration made the economy worse rather than better. 52% versus 28%. Plus nearly all voters, 89%, say that they are extremely or very concerned about inflation, up from 83% early in his term. Over 70% say the economy is in bad shape. While that's better than the high during the Biden's term of 84%, who rated it negative in July of 2022. It's also back to where things were at the start of his presidency when 69% said the same. Now it's 70%. Only 13% of voters say that they're getting ahead financially. 42% feel they're falling behind. 6 in 10 Democrats agree with 8 in 10 Republicans and 7 in 10 independents that the economy is only fair or in poor condition. Biden departs in this poll with 42% of voters who approve of his job performance. 2 percentage points just in this one particular poll above his record low. Approval for Biden is lower than Obama, 57%. Clinton, 62% at the end of their presidencies. There you go. But 80% of Democrats approve of Biden as he leaves. 35% of independents, 9% of Republicans. So 80% of Democrats who had no problem with Biden being removed. I mean, this is where it makes no sense. 80% of Democrats approve of Biden, yet the Democratic Party kicked him out, and there was no anger. No way. Anybody see any anger about Biden being kicked out even after they lost? Has anybody seen anything? Why would you approve of Biden if you're not angry that they kicked him out? That Democrats kicked him out. Pretty amazing. And then another poll out there, CNN poll, released yesterday, found 56% of Americans expect Trump to do a good job. Up from, with all the stuff that has happened, with everything they've thrown at him, it was 48% in 2016, and it's 56% now. The poll also found 55% approve of the way the president-elect has handled his second transition, far higher than the 40% approval number he received 8 years ago. And by the way, with the nominees, the vast majority of the nominees, the vast majority of time giving great answers, because the answers are giving is what the American public thinks, I believe will also help him. Most Americans, 56%, also expect the state of the economy, one of the voters' top issues heading into Election Day, to be very or somewhat good after Trump's first year back in the White House. 52% indicated that the country would be better off overall at the end of Trump's second term. The high expectation for the country come with the belief that Trump will deliver on some of his biggest campaign promises. An overwhelming majority, Eric and I have talked about this for a long time, 80% feel it's likely that Trump will impose tariffs on goods from Mexico, Canada, and China. And 50% expect the cost of U.S. goods to go down under Trump. And that's really interesting because the administration, or the incoming administration, has been trying to tell people we're not going to be able to really bring prices down. 74% believe that he'll follow through with his plan to detain and deport migrants that enter the country illegally. 56% think the incoming president is going to shut down the U.S. border with Mexico. I don't know what the definition of shut down means, though, because he won't be able to shut it down 100%. So I don't know how you would view that if you answered it that way. Will he severely limit what Biden allowed? Yes. And if that's what they're thinking when they answer that question, I believe that there's a very good chance that they and I will be correct in assuming that Trump will vastly reduce the number of people crossing the border illegally. 866-90-RED-I.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Don't forget to download our Red Eye Radio app today. You can listen to our podcast. If you can't listen to the show overnight on one of our great radio stations, you can listen to our podcast, which a few minutes after the show is done is when that goes online. And if you don't get a chance overnight to listen to one of our great radio stations that carries us, we stream all 5 hours live on our app, and so you can listen there. Coming up following the top of the hour, more wildfire politics. Really some interesting audio from Michael Schellenberger that mirrors what a lot of the assistant chiefs and chiefs of the L.A. Fire Department are talking about. Understaffed, not enough equipment, all that and more on the way.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.